Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Can I ask you something honest? When was the last time you gave yourself permission to want something different? Not for your kids, not for your husband or your grandchildren or whoever it is that needs you today. For you. Because here is the truth that nobody says out loud. And I want you to really hear this. Some of you are not exhausted from doing too much. You are exhausted from pretending that you are fine. Pretending that this chapter of life is enough. Pretending that starting over is for younger women. And maybe you have this quiet, stubborn little voice inside you that keeps whispering, there has to be more than this. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Stay with me. I want to talk today about something that takes more courage than most people will ever admit, starting over after 55. And before I say anything else, I want to acknowledge something. You are not a beginner at life. You have decades of wisdom living inside you. You have raised people and survived losses and loved through things that would have broken someone with less strength. You have already done so much, and yet here you are, feeling stuck. Feeling like the life you are living no longer fits who you have become. Like a coat that was perfect once, but somehow, somewhere along the way, you outgrew it without even noticing. Maybe a relationship ended, a marriage, a friendship, a chapter. Maybe the children left and the house went quiet and you realized, for the first time in 30 years, you don't quite know what you like anymore. Maybe you looked in the mirror one morning and thought, who is this woman? And what does she actually want? That moment of not knowing, that is not a failure. That is an awakening. The psychologists call it a self-concept crisis, when the identity you built around your roles starts to shift. And it is disorienting, it is frightening. It can feel like grief. But it is also, and this is what I want you to hold on to today, it is also the beginning of something real. Because you cannot build a true life on top of a life that no longer fits. At some point, you have to be brave enough to clear the ground, and that is what we are going to talk about today. When women tell me they are afraid to start over, the conversation usually starts with the future. What if I fail? What if it's too late? What if I make the wrong choice? But here is what I have come to understand: those fears are almost never really about the future. They are about the past. Specifically, about all the times you tried something and it did not work. All the times someone told you that you were too much or not enough, or that you should be grateful for what you have. All the quiet moments when your dreams got politely set aside for someone else's needs. We carry those experiences in our nervous system. That is not a metaphor. That is neuroscience. When we think about change, our brain scans its history for evidence. And if that history contains enough disappointment, the brain does something very protective. It says, no. It's safer here. Psychologists call this the negativity bias. Our brains are wired to weigh losses more heavily than gains, to fear the unknown more than we appreciate the possibility. But here is what that same brain forgets to factor in. You are not who you were at 30. You are not who you were at 40. The woman who experienced those setbacks was still learning. You, right now, with everything you have been through, you are someone completely different. Someone far more equipped. The fear is old information. It is a warning signal that never got updated. And the first act of courage in starting over is this: recognizing that the fear in your chest is not telling you the truth about who you are today. It is telling you a story about who you used to be. You are allowed to write a new story. There is a woman, I'll call her Patricia. She was 61 when her youngest child got married and moved abroad. Her husband had passed 2 years before. And she told me if I woke up one morning and I didn't know what the point of me was anymore. That phrase stayed with me. The point of me, docs, because so many women build their identity entirely around their function. Mother, wife, caregiver, provider. And these are beautiful, meaningful roles. But they are roles. They are not the whole of you. Psychologists talk about role exit theory, the process of psychologically leaving behind an identity that once defined you. And it sounds simple, but it is one of the most disorienting things a human being can go through. Because when the role disappears, you are left with a question you may not have asked in decades: who am I when I am not being useful to someone else? Patricia started painting at 62, not because she thought she'd be good at it, but because she remembered, from somewhere very deep, that she had always wanted to. And slowly, that small, quiet act of choosing herself rebuilt something. Not the old Patricia. Someone bigger. Someone who had Patricia's wisdom's eye and the freedom to be more. Here is the psychology of it. Identity is not a fixed thing. Research by developmental psychologist Erik Erikson shows that the challenge of later adulthood is what he called integrity. Finding meaning in the life you've lived and building something that feels true going forward. Starting over is not losing your identity. It is completing it. It is saying, the roles I played were real and important. And I am also more than all of them put together. One of the most important things I want to say today is this: you are allowed to grieve the life you are leaving and still be excited about what comes next. In our culture, we treat grief and hope as if they can't coexist. As if moving forward means you weren't grateful for what was. As if being sad about what you're leaving means you shouldn't go. But that is not how the human heart works. Think about the metaphor of a garden. Sometimes, in order to make room for new growth, you have to cut back the old plants, and cutting them back can hurt. You may have tended those plants for years. They meant something. You love them. Grieving that, letting yourself feel the loss of the old chapter, is not weakness. It is honesty. And honesty is always the first step toward healing. What the research on post-traumatic growth tells us, and this is fascinating, is that the people who allow themselves to fully feel their losses are actually more likely to rebuild stronger than those who push through without processing. Psychologist Richard Tedeschi found that the most profound personal growth often happens through struggle, not in spite of it. So if you are in that in-between place right now, where you know the old chapter is ending, but the new one hasn't fully revealed itself, please hear this. That space is not empty. It is sacred. It is where the new you is forming. Let me be honest about something that the culture tells women over 55. Even if it never quite says it directly, your best years are behind you. Say you hear it in the silence when you mention a dream. You feel it in the way certain conversations go quiet. You absorb it from 1,000 small signals that say, starting over is for the young. And I want to dismantle that carefully and completely. The concept of too late is not a fact. It is a cultural story. And like all stories, it was written by someone for a reason, and it can be rewritten. Here is what the science actually says. The human brain retains neuroplasticity, the ability to form new connections and learn new things, well into our 70s and 80s. A study by Harvard Medical School found that certain cognitive abilities, including vocabulary, emotional regulation, and pattern recognition, actually peak in our 60s and 70s. Peak. You are not past your prime. You are in a different kind of prime, one that is quieter, wiser, less interested in performing and more interested in being. And here is something else worth considering. When you are young, you are often starting things under enormous pressure. Financial pressure, social pressure, the pressure to prove yourself, the pressure to be chosen, the pressure to compete. Now, you are starting over without those weights. You know who you are. You know what you can survive. You know what matters and what doesn't. You have perspective that no amount of youth can buy. That is not a disadvantage. That is an extraordinary gift. The only thing that is too late is waiting for permission that will never come. I want to tell you about the Japanese concept of kaizen. It is the philosophy of small, continuous improvement, the idea that meaningful change does not come from enormous leaps, but from tiny, consistent steps in the right direction. We live in a culture obsessed with transformation. Dramatic before and afters, radical reinventions, big announcements. And that makes starting over feel terrifying because it makes it feel like you have to have it all figured out before you begin. You do not need to know where the whole staircase goes. You just need to see the first step. Maybe the first step is picking up the phone to call an old friend you've been missing. Maybe it is signing up for a class you've always been curious about. Maybe it is simply sitting quietly with a notebook and writing, for the first time in years, what you actually want. Not what's expected, not what's practical. What you want. Those things feel small. They are not small. They are signals to your nervous system that you are safe, that it is okay to move, that you still have agency over your own life. And every small step you take makes the next step a little easier. That is not motivation speaking. That is dopamine. That is your brain rewarding forward movement. There is no version of starting over that begins with having all the answers. Every version begins with one small, imperfect, courageous act, and you are more than capable of that. You have been doing courageous things your entire life. You just never got to do them for yourself. I want to close with something I believe with everything in me. The fact that you are here, watching this, asking these questions, feeling this restlessness, is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something in you is alive. Restlessness is not failure. It is aliveness, trying to find its direction. And here is the thing about starting over that nobody talks about enough. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about coming home to the parts of yourself that got set aside and the dreams that got quietly folded away. And the woman you always were underneath all those responsibilities. She is still there. She was always there. She has been patient. And she is ready. You do not need to be fearless to begin. Fear and courage are not opposites. You can be absolutely terrified and still take the step. That is what courage actually is. Not the absence of fear,